Welcome back, everybody, to Recruitment Uncensored. So this is now the second show. For anybody that missed the first show, which was 2 weeks ago, it is on my YouTube channel. It's being streamed live now, but the previous episode is on there, so you can watch it then. But for any of you that are new and don't know me, my name is Kate, and I am a recruitment coach and trainer and disc specialist, which we're going to come on to in a second. I am really, really, really excited for today's episode. Before I introduce our amazing guest, Sharon, I just want to go over what we're going to be doing in these shows because, like I said, it's only episode 2, so not some of you might not know what we're going to be talking about. I'm mainly going to be having guests on, and we're going to be talking really openly and honestly about recruitment-related subjects. And every other week, because they're going to be fortnightly, I'm going to have different guests on that are an expert in their area. And yeah, we're just going to be really open and honest about things and answer a lot of the questions that a lot of agencies I speak to and consultants have. So that is what these shows are going to be all about, basically. But yeah, I've got a guest on with me today, Sharon Lawton. Now, Sharon actually trains me in my disc qualifications because I'm a disc licensed trainer. And I just thought she'd be the perfect person to have on today to talk about how we can get our more non-salesy members of the team to be more salesy, because this comes up a lot when I go into agencies. But just before we start, Sharon, do you want to tell everybody watching a little bit about you and what you do?
Thanks, Kate. Really pleased to be here and a privilege to come on and be invited onto your show. So I'm really looking forward to chatting about today. I'm Sharon Lawton. I'm Head of Training and Business Development at the Coaching Academy. We're one of the largest global training organisations for coaches in the world. And I'm a disc master trainer. So I first came across disc in 2011, and since then it's been so transformational for me that it sort of set me on the path to where I am now. So I mentor and train people like yourself, and also just to understand the whole disc model, which is sort of what you're doing with your clients as well. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and it's been a game changer for me as well, because I did it. I got an intro to it in my personal professional diploma, or I can't remember what it's called now, but my initial coaching diploma. And you just get that little taste for it, don't you? And then I just got like obsessed with it. I was like, this is amazing. Like, what if I'd have known about it when I was a consultant myself? I just think like, God, what would I have achieved with that like knowledge? So yeah, so it's been a game changer for me as well. Definitely. Definitely. I'm just going to quickly in the chat put the link for the YouTube stream, because somebody's put in the chat that the desktop one might not be working for some people anyway. So let me just quickly chuck that in. And at least if anyone's struggling, you can use that link and it's coming in now. There we go, it's there, but I'll put it in the chat and then you can access it live. So let's get started covering this subject. So I know we both could talk all day about this, so we want to utilize the time as best as we can. First of all, we've touched on it a little bit, but why? Because there's other behavioral profiling tools, isn't there? People use lots of different ones. Why has this been your go-to tool over, say, some of the other ones that are out there?
I mean, as you know, Kate, I am genuinely just interested in, sort of people's behaviour. And I make no sort of secret of the fact that I'm the type of person that will sit on the beach or, in a coffee shop and just watch people, just people watch. And now I know why, because I'm just fascinated with how people interact. And as I say, my background, learning and development, I've been in learning and development all of my life. My whole sort of career pretty much feels like it's been in learning and development in some form or another. And yes, I have come across lots of other profiling tools. There are plenty of psychometric profiling tools out there. They are pretty much, or if you trace back the history, they all pretty much gravitate towards, sort of the original historical tools of trying to work out behavior and human behavior. But the reason why I like DISC over and above the others, and I'm not saying that the others are, sort of any worse or any better. It's just that I find that DISC is one of those tools that is simple without being simplistic. So, you can attend a training workshop, the type of thing that you will be doing yourself, Kate, for your clients. And it will be very, very, in a very sort of quick way, start to recognize your own patterns of behavior, recognize your own motivational drivers, recognize the reason why you might not do or do certain things because of the innate personality fears. So understanding the power of your personality doesn't need to be complicated. And sometimes I've found in my experience that some of the other profiles are just a little bit more complicated than I believe they need to be. And it's not just about ourselves. You can understand other people's behaviors very, very quickly. So it's based on observable behavioral differences. And I think that's the most important part, sort of looking at what is it that most people do, because I guess we're like human chameleons. We will always be modifying our behavior depending on which environment we're in. So like learning a language, a foreign language, once you know the clues to look for, DISC is a very sort of great tool in being able to build rapport. And that's, I guess, what we're going to be talking about today. But build rapport with people and clients and team members much, much more quickly.
Yeah, I think for me, I did loads of different behavioral profiling tools before I discovered this, because part of interview processes, companies I joined, and I think the thing that stood out for me with this, there was two things. One, you mentioned how easy it was to understand. And then I was able, like you said, to spot it in others. Even before I did the different accreditations I've chosen to go on and do, I could start spotting things in other people. And that was massively beneficial for me. But I also understood myself better. There was, particularly through COVID, I started to really question, like, I'm so outgoing and I'm so confident around people. No problem going into a room full of strangers. But I absolutely loved lockdown. I know that sounds nuts, but being on my own, solitude, thoughtful activity, I loved it. So I didn't understand that about myself. And then when I did my profile, I was like, right, I get it, because I've got the two different sides to me. So I learned a lot about myself from this. My self-awareness went like completely through the roof.
Absolutely. And we can't change anything unless we're aware, can we? Self-awareness leads to change. And so, it's enabled me to modify my behavior to avoid conflict, to manage a situation better, to sort of motivate and encourage my team members or sort of direct reportees, that type of thing. So, and also in my personal life as well, because we can click and clash very easily, to the people that, that are in our personal lives as well as our professional lives. So it really is something that is useful for all aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely as a trainer now, and with different types of people, groups of people all the time. And, my dominant behavior is in DISC, the D, very dominant, direct. And I have to be very aware of, my communication and adapting and modifying, because I can be too much for some people. So, without that knowledge, would I have all the clients I've got? Would I get the same results? I don't know, to be honest, because I just wouldn't have a clue how I'm coming across.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important, isn't it? We see the world as we are, not how other people are. And so, the most emotionally intelligent people are the ones that can actually sort of see the world from other perspectives and step into that, if they need to. And that's the most important. We can't change others. We can only change ourselves. And when we change ourselves or we modify, because it is all a part of, if we go back history wise, it was really important that we were accepted by our tribe, if we go back to sort of caveman days, because if we weren't accepted, which meant actually, I needed to fit in, then we might be rejected from the tribe, or then we would never survive. So there is still that ancient sort of need for sort of being able to adapt and fit in. even now. So, as I say, back to that human chameleon in being able to, modify and manage appropriately, because we don't want to, start being a, copycat type of behavior. It's appropriate, chameleon of behavior, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the main thing that I think everyone's going to want us to talk about. And we started talking a little bit about this before we went live, didn't we? So how can we use this to get the more reserved types of our teams? Because we have them. So these are the S's and the C's, basically. How can we get them to be more salesy? Because I have been asked this question a few times recently.
I mean, I'm going to sort of step back a little bit, and just in case anybody that's here today doesn't really understand what DISC is, I mean, we've said that it's a psychometric profiling tool, but it's an acronym. D, I, S, and C is the sort of the dominant and influencing, supportive and conscientious parts of our personality. So we are a little bit of all four of those. It's just that we will be a little bit more, we have a little bit more preference. The intensity will be a little bit stronger in certain areas of our personality than others. So, good to sort of understand that. And of course, it's based on the model of human behavior where we have outgoing and active and reserved, reflective, thoughtful. So if we're looking at those more reserved types, then on the model, we're looking at the S and the C style. So have a richer inner world, like to think things through rather than talk things out, think about it before they make a decision, measure twice, cut once, that type of sort of approach. So with that being said, a little bit of a challenge maybe to your listeners out there today, we're making an assumption that those more reserved types are not salesy. So what's your definition of salesy, quote unquote? Because it's important to remember that your clients will have these styles too. And so if we just assume that everybody wants, sort of that fast, direct approach, then we are losing all of those really lovely strengths and traits that the other sort of styles bring to the team. So therefore, we lose the sort of the fact that, our more sort of, the more reserved types will have deeper listening skills. They will be building deep and genuine rapport with the client. They're great team players. There will be the types that, particularly if they have more of that sort of C detailed approach, will be sort of excellent on the delivery of the service, have a methodical plan in approach to the school, analyze their performance. So there's lots of strengths there that perhaps we are potentially underestimating. So I think for me, it's about remembering that the customer, the client, has these sales too. So for example, years ago now, I was going in to do it was a DISC sales training, funnily enough, for a property company that were providing properties for overseas students. Yeah, so foreign students that were living in the UK, and they were high end. And I was working with the marketing and sales teams. And what we were talking about is to remember that actually, we have to modify to the client style. And that's really important. So if you want to build your, if you want to build your revenue, if you want to really ensure that your clients and customers aren't looking elsewhere, then it's about thinking, well, what is their style? And if their style is a little bit more reflective, if they do need to know the detail, if they are measuring you on the product or the service that you're providing with the attention to detail, if that's not there because what you view as good sales is fast, bang, 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 numbers, get it over the line. Well, you've got a whole range of clients out there that you're going to switch off.
Yeah.
So I guess I've sort of come to the answer to that question, Kate, in maybe the way that potentially was the opposite to potentially sort of what you were looking for. So it's about remembering to value all of the styles within the team, because they all bring something new, unique, but also, what is it that your client needs? And anyone can do any job, they do it in a different way. So the more reserved types, of course they can sell. Of course they can service your clients. They will just do it in a different way to the more active go-getter parts of, members of your team. So it's about communicating in the most effective way to your clients and sort of pulling that out. So I don't know if that actually answers your question. Feel free to dip in a bit more if you need to.
Yeah, and I think that's what people forget sometimes. I think there's that mentality of you can either sell or you can't. We're looking for always these like fiery, like you said, go-getters, outwardly. I mean, you can spot high Ds from a mile off anyway, can't you? Even if you haven't done disc, you know in your mind the types of people they are, But imagine if we had a whole office full of these people. Nightmare. And
well, I'm telling you now, Kate, when I get a phone call and they go, "Oh, hello, how are you today?" It's like, whoa, hold on a minute. You don't know me. You haven't earned permission to speak to me by my first name. So, if we only assume that sales is one-dimensional, then we're losing all those beautiful strengths of all that sort of sincere trust, building rapport, collaborative approach, all of that stuff, facts and figures, to help the client make that decision. So go.
It's all about relationships.
Sorry, say again.
It's all about relationships. Recruitment in sales recruitment. It's about relationships. How we build relationships is, with people, and every person has different facets to them. So this is just tapping into that.
Yeah. And if you're missing that ability to be able to sincerely tap, be able to sort of see what your client's need is and tap into that, as I say, you're potentially missing out on a whole market of clients that you can add to, will be in your funnel really, and in your in how you sort of get people over the line. So
and honestly, some of the best consultants that I've trained and worked with have not been your typical salesy people. And we were talking about thinking about the clients and customers. Some of them have been in markets like IT, engineering, where some of, not all, because we can't say all people in IT are C's and S's, but a lot of people are. They're great at building relationships with them because they have that initial understanding and they're coming across in a way they're not having to modify as much, but they've also they've had their profiles, so they're aware. Some of those customers wouldn't want a load of D's ringing them or whatever, because initially especially or for I's, too informal communication for them. They're very much about attention to detail, aren't they? So
yeah, exactly right. And and I used to work in L&D in an HR role when I was in the corporate sector, and so we would have clients like your type of clients in your industry, obviously wanting to work with us to help us to recruit in, there are lots and lots of different approaches. So we were at the time when this is sort of back in the late 90s, I was working in underwriting, insurance and underwriting, but it was a very specific area, and so we needed people to understand the market. And so if a recruitment agency was sort of coming in to pitch to work with us, but they hadn't done their background information and they just assumed that we were an insurance company and an underwriting company like any others, well, it's like, well, you haven't even taken the trouble to find out the detail about us. So, you can start to see that sort of go-getter approach, and maybe because our traditional stereotypical, sales might be, you know, sort of very enthusiastic and chatty and, you know, sort of sell snow to the Eskimos, you know, type of thing. But if their attention to detail is not there, and you're working with a client who needs that attention to detail, well, it's like, thank you, but you're not for us.
Yeah.
So,
and if you
yeah,
don't understand that, you're
people.
gonna.
I think that's important, isn't it? People by people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think with that question, in a nutshell, it's not about it's if you take the time to understand the individuals in the team, which is
Yeah.
really, really important, and
Yeah.
and first of all understand that all of them have the potential. They're just going to do it differently, and then it's using that information to then know, right, well, now we know how they're going to do it differently, and then we know how to support them, and also modifying and adapting your leadership,
Yes,
which is
because
very important.
it is, Kate, because if you have the knowledge of the model, you will also understand that all of the styles have motivators and all of the styles will have fears, which helps us to understand why people do or don't do certain behaviors. So to be able to tap into that, to know exactly how to motivate your more reserved types, for them to have the same or very similar results to other members of your team, well, that's the difference that's going to make the difference.
Yeah, definitely. So, next thing I wanted us to cover, which I think is going to be on a lot of people's minds as well, is a lot of people want to know, well, what's the impact this is having? And we both have seen with numerous clients the impact that it makes. Me more from the recruitment world, you work with people in all different industries with it. What impact have you seen DISC have with, in particular, the sales teams that face these sort of challenges?
Mm-hmm. I mean, really good question. I think the model itself, before you even start to drill down into the 4 preferences, because they are preferences, and I think that's really important to remember that these are preferences. And, you know, layering over the top of that is things like emotional intelligence and, you know, all of that stuff. But the model itself really helps your team to maximize the chances of closing the sale. Yeah. Because people buy from people who they trust. Yeah. So to be able to adapt, for your team to be able to adapt, to be able to build rapport to a much deeper level, then, you know, you're maximizing your chances of your clients, you know, sort of buying into you, into your company. On top of that, it's going to improve relationships with the clients and the customers. So that's going to increase opportunities for your sales success, ultimately, you know. And you're going to also understand your customers' motivational drivers. And, you know, that's going to help the whole team to become, and your clients to become, more personally engaged. And therefore, your team is going to be more effective at their job because they're going to understand. I mean, I have to say, when I've done sales training using DISC, some and a lot of what we might say, quote unquote, good salespeople sort of say, I didn't realize I was doing this anyway. I was just doing it unconsciously. So it sort of brings it to mind. So you can be more mindful of making those adaptations. But certainly, it can make a huge, huge impact. And then, of course, the best teams I have ever worked with are those that have a mixture, because everybody has something to bring. So if you imagine the cogs of a wheel, you need all of the cogs to fit together for that wheel to be able to turn properly. You know, if the cogs don't fit together, or if there's a missing cog, well, it's going to slip, or it's not going, you know, that cog's not going to sort of flow properly. So having, you know, a blend of all of those styles is going to show a much more effective team. So you've got all of the aspects to support your client's need. Who knows, you might actually be able to match the strengths of particular styles to the needs of your particular client. So, you know, that's for me, that's a really powerful way of working.
So powerful in sales. Do you know what actually I found when I'm training people, and we've used DISC and they've got that awareness, is also not, we've talked a lot about, like, you know, building relationships, and you imagine speaking to people, but actually written emails,
oh
the
gosh,
LinkedIn messages they're sending, because I mean, you haven't got tone of voice, you haven't got body language,
Yeah.
and getting them to think about, okay, you are potentially, because we haven't profiled them, but potentially emailing a high D type person, bullet points, get to the point. You don't need any what I call fluffiness. Whereas maybe with the S's or the C's in particular, make sure you give the information. You need to cover.
Yeah.
Don't leave a stone unturned. They'll probably still have questions anyway, but make sure you give the information, because they won't respect you enough otherwise. If you're being too vague, and just getting them to think more about even like the emails they're putting together, that normally they just write a quick email,
Yeah.
send it to the client.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a job done. And
Yeah.
that can be make or break in recruitment sometimes as well.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And I think adding on to that, actually, Kate, which links back to your first question, if the team doesn't understand that, because your clients that have a more reserved preference, an S and a C preference, so supportive, steady, cautious, conscientious preference, are your biggest RB backers, if you like, so they like to, they're not going to commit there and then. They want to go away and reflect and think about it. Yeah, they're not going to be the quick decision makers. So if your so-called salespeople are more of the sort of outgoing, faster pace, they might mistake those buying signals because they're more subliminal. But the buying signals are there. It's just the patience to be able to nurture that. But if you're fast paced and you think, well, that's it, I'm moving on to the next one, you're not giving that time for, sort of a really good client to, to move over the line. So, there are buying signals that are, less overt, I guess is what I'm saying, because those clients will want to think about it. They'll want to go away and do a little bit of research on you first. They'll want to sort of reflect on the questions or the answers to their questions. They'll want to check to make sure that all the detail is there, or that you've shown a sincere interest in the business need. So there's so much there actually where impact and challenges where sales teams are concerned.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the time and it's absolutely flown by, because as I said, we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Before I share your top tip with everybody watching, and just to say, Piers, I've seen your question in the comments. There's a couple of quite meaty questions there. So I'll tag Sharon when we come off the live and we can both help you out and comment on it. But yeah, before I go into Sharon's top tip, just a roundup of what's going to happen on the next episode. So it's usually they're always going to be on a Wednesday, but I'm being really annoying and I'm going to Greece next Wednesday and I'm going for a week. So I won't be able to do it from Greece. So it's going to be on Thursday, the 29th, same time, 12:30. I'll obviously put the event on LinkedIn, so you'll all be invited and you can add anyone on that you want to. My guest for next time, I've got the amazing Jo Phillips on with me, who is a fellow coach of me at the Recruiting Gym. She specialises, she does a lot of recruitment coaching and training, but leadership, and in particular, women in leadership roles in recruitment. So we're covering a really interesting topic, why women don't need fixing. So that's going to be a really interesting one to talk about. So she's coming on with me in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's what will be happening. So yeah, before we finish, Sharon, let's cover your top tip, because we had a little bit of a chat about this, didn't we, before we went live?
Yeah, and I have covered it a couple of times actually, and I'm not going to make any apologies for having it as my top tip really. And that is to remember that your clients have different styles too. And not all sales styles will suit your clients. And so therefore, having a blend in your team is going to support your more reserved clients to buy into you and to your team. So remember, those faster paced, more direct approach team members could switch off very, very easily. Those that want to be sincerely listened to, want to sort of slow the pace down a little bit so they can consider the information, or hold on, I've got more questions and you're trying to get me over the line. So I think it's about remembering to step back and value the fact that your clients have different styles too.
Do you know what, like that, early in my recruitment career, I had that a lot with I worked an engineering desk, and a lot of the clients I was reaching out to weren't, I mean, and I was even more of a D then. I mean, I was like fiery and direct and wanted things done yesterday, and they were a bit slower. So I think that is a really good top tip for anybody listening, whether you're in recruitment or sales, because
Yeah.
it's super, super important. So, but yeah, we've run out of time. So thank you so much, Sharon, for coming on with me today. It's been
Pleasure.
amazing chatting to you about this. If any of you have got any questions, the comments will still be going. Just chuck it in or contact either of us directly, and we will get them covered off for you. But yeah, I will see you back for the next episode of Recruitment Uncensored, Thursday the 29th. So see you all soon.